Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is okay. What a difference 7 days can make because this time last week we were rushing to get online to have a chat about BitTensor, and it's ridiculous rally, which I suppose got all the way up to 540. And whilst that was doing what you conceive would be the opposite of what Bitcoin and most of the market was doing, now that we've seen that BitTensor has pulled back, the market is continuing to drop, and there's a real battle going on in and around that $100,000 level. Sentiment has completely changed, so we're just gonna have a look at it, see what we can see from the charts. We'll have a look at some trading setups. Carrie's asked me to talk about some psychological things in terms of trading and sidestepping, which we'll cover as well, and we'll just kind of see where we are. I'll brush through this first set of charts as quick as I can, but you can kind of see Bitcoin, the battle with 100K is raging as we speak. We're only ever so slightly below it, but on the 3 day candle, you can see so far a fairly convincing drop below. Day and a half fit to go. As always, got to remind ourselves of that. But we fall down to 98, closed 98. That's the lowest we'll have been since the beginning of May. And kind of when we lose this level, just on simplistic trying to find support and resistance, you can't see because my head's in the way, but there is nothing. It was a decent move out of the tariff crash in April, which got us this next leg above 100K. And so we start to consolidate below 100K. I think there's going to be some talk about that movement down to the downside, and that obviously is going to start alarm bells. And so it is decision time, really. Not like we really have a choice in what Bitcoin's going to do. We all have our plans of where we want to go, but Bitcoin needs to make a decision whether it's going to climb back above 100,000 and convince us that it's going to continue this bull market, or it's going to fall through. And we saw the sentiment and the discussion yesterday on the trading pub about whether or not a fall down would be the end of the bear market. I'm not ruling it out. I think just what we got to do is now we are starting to be below these levels, and we are. It doesn't matter if it's 4 weeks or 3 months, 4 months. We are getting towards the end of the bull cycle, so we shouldn't rule things out just because we don't want it to happen. And whilst I haven't sold anything, and I will tell people when I do sell, I'm not ruling out stuff, especially if we start losing key levels. We just have to revisit our convictions and just see if they still stack up. Anyway, we'll dive into Bitcoin. I think lower time frames are working really well for trying to give us a direction. So we'll get into those in a moment. In terms of Bitcoin dominance, that has seen a bit of a pullback over the last 2 days or so, but I think we may see this fall back to 60 flat, but I think this will continue to rise. We can kind of see on the right hand side, with the exception of Zcash, most things are falling, sort of 5 or more% across the market, just on the ones that I follow. Sadly, BitTensor is a little bit higher than that at the moment. But I just see this as a bit of a pullback. I do not see Bitcoin dominance rolling over from here. Altcoins, I can't see in the price action, in the charts, how they are outperforming Bitcoin. And yes, everything's falling, but generally altcoins are falling faster than Bitcoin is. Hence why this is still moving up. That being said, revisit convictions. There is some sort of support line down here. I suppose wick to wick is a little bit better. And as I say, we may see it come back down to the 60. If it breaks the 60, I really need to see it drop down to like 59 and a half before I'm convinced it's going to bounce back up. But for me, I still think we'll see this and then that move there. And I would not be surprised if 63 and a half gets taken. I think I've been clear on that one for a while. Which one have I got here? Total two. Total two. Looking a bit like Bitcoin, but we're getting quite close to this key level, 125. It's already tapped it a couple of days ago. It feels, and similar with Bitcoin, probably heading back down to 98. It feels like this one is going to be heading in the same direction. And so all eyes really on whether or not altcoins can turn it around here. And I still stand by the fact that I think they will be led by what Bitcoin does. It doesn't feel like altcoins have taken over at all. Obviously, there's the outlier, and we will address Zcash a little bit later on, even near up today. Actually, whilst we're here, let's just quickly have a look at total three. And the reason I say this is I'm moving on to the daily, but I was just looking at whether or not to just get rid of total two and just use total three, because Ethereum is not exactly doing that well. But this this line, oh, I thought I was extending it. This line here is where we're at. This is effectively representative of the one we saw on total 2, that support line. They kind of marry up. As you can see, total 2 has held its own above that one at the moment, suggesting that Ethereum is carrying a little bit of weight. You take that out, and we've actually already started to lose that, and we're heading down. And that's not necessarily what I was talking about, but we can see how far we could potentially fall. Another 200 billion to take us down to the bottom of that wick. And I hate to say it, but, you know, okay, we've got 870 billion that may give us some sort of support, but losing that, I think this can go. This has been exacerbated by those cascading liquidation events, which took some altcoins down 98% of their value, and they recovered it as well, hence why it is such a long wick. But I was then looking just at generally at altcoins, and if you have a look at the very bottom, oh no, wrong year. So let me zoom out a bit further. The very bottom of the market, end of 2023, was basically 300 billion. The very top of the market, 1.2 billion. So we have seen altcoins across the board do a 4x, which for altcoins is not very good. And that's why people are suffering, because we always expect altcoins to be double digits or more. You have a look at Bitcoin over that same period, though. And the fact I've had to adjust my scale is probably going to prove to you what we're going to say, although my head's in the way of it now. 15,000 at its base to 126,000 is an 8x. So over the same period, Bitcoin has still outperformed altcoins by twice as much, which it doesn't usually happen like that. By now we should be experiencing that pump within the altcoins. And things like this just convince me that I personally don't see a massive altcoin season. I know that's different than what was discussed yesterday in the trading pub, and that's absolutely fine. We're allowed to have different opinions and still be friends. But I just don't see it. And you know where I am. I'm 50% in altcoins pretty much with my BitTensor, but the rest of it is sticking with Bitcoin. And that's where I'm going to stay for now. I mean, there's no point changing now, to be perfectly frank. Moving on to BitTensor, and I touched on this on Tuesday, sorry. The euphoria of how quickly it's gone up over the last couple of weeks, unfortunately, can easily be met by the fear in which it can come back down. Just because something goes up fast doesn't mean it can't fall fast. And this has fallen fast. 3-day time frame. I mean, we popped at 540, but over the last 5 days, we really have fallen. And when I looked at this chart yesterday, we were seeing that actually we were back up here, and Tuesday we were talking about this confluence and waiting to see what would happen right in the apex of the white line and the yellow line. We lost through it. Then we've come back. What would we call that? A Kobo. And then we've just fallen away. And it feels like that's it. Now, 360 has been a level that I talked about for weeks, being something that we needed to pass. It now needs to hold for us. Don't worry about it's $5 below it at the moment. Let's just see where we are at the end of the day. But if we move this onto the daily time frame, if we don't keep 360, if we've got this wick here, sort of 340 kind of area for the wicks, a few bodies, and this little bit of a double top, which ended up playing out. But failing that, we're back down to the Gandalf line. As much as I hate to have to say that, 315 to 310 is kind of the area that I think we could find ourselves falling. And no, I have not sidestepped. I haven't really given it a look into sidestep. So well done for those of you that have. I've actually played Tau pretty poorly over the past 2 days. Been trying to get along in there, and it just hasn't worked out for me. I've been forcing it because Zcash has been longs, and we can now see that it has fallen through. I'm not really too sure how to play it. I have a short running at the moment, but it's only just opened at sort of 360 when we lost the level, so it's not really progressed. But I would suggest that this continues, the overall market continues to show weakness. I just think this will continue to fall down to its natural state, and unfortunately for us, it has spent so much time in and around the low 300s that it goes there. And I hate to say it, but then you start to talk about, well, I'm not saying it's a blow off top, but when things move incredibly sharp up and then they come and correct back down to the mean, it usually signifies some sort of blow off, whether that's end of cycle or just end of phase, however you want to call it. So that's something that we definitely need to consider. Of course, I'm going to be monitoring this and looking to see where it goes. And we're going to jump down onto the lower timeframes in a moment. Sentiment. Let's get rid of that ad. Sentiment's down in the toilet. I mean, we've been as low as 21. Last couple of days, low 20s, but we are actually in extreme fear, which again given where we are in the market, is unusual. Not unheard of, but unusual. Back in April 2021, we peaked at 64,000. Over the next 6 weeks, we dropped down to 28,000. We did get into extreme fear at that time. We were able to recover and buy back. And if you're trying to look for some sort of similarities, maybe there's some sort of hope there that, we had a big peak. We did have a massive correction. We were able to consolidate and move on. Unusual times there with, giving out stimmy checks and everything else. Money printer was already going. We don't have that yet. And whilst we are expecting quantitative tightening to end in December, we need the money printer to actually turn on and for that money to filter through. And as I've said, that seems to take months. It doesn't just happen day one. So we may have a bit of a chop in and around where we are. So anyway, canary in the coal mine. BlackRock actually bought yesterday. They have had a week of selling, but yesterday they decided the prices were juicy enough and the investors have started buying. In fact, it was the first black day across the board in a week. So mixed messages from this. We're kind of 50-50 BlackRock over the last 3 weeks, selling and buying or doing nothing as they did on the 4th of November. But there's not enough evidence there to suggest to me that they think it's over. More just as probably a reimagining of where funds were, selling whilst it was slightly higher. I mean, you think end of October, we were 112,000. Maybe some people are starting to move back in for a 10% uplift on their price. Anyway, we cover more of that stuff on Tuesday. So let's get into some of the charts once I have a bit of a drink. And it's on the weekly at the moment, but with some vector candles as well. And I think the point from this one here, we are resting on the 50 EMA, and that 50 EMA also ties in. This white line, remember, is a vector candle base from the daily, not the weekly. So this candle here on the 3rd, sometime the week commencing the 23rd of June, had a green vector candle. So don't worry about it too much there. It just so happens coincidentally to tie in with a 50 EMA at the moment, but that is a coincidence. We can kind of see since the all-time high, beginning of October, we have just been in a steady downtrend. 5 weeks of a downtrend. I know you could argue that middle week was an up week, but just overall the trend is down. And in that we have lost key levels, 109,000 we talked about for months range, and then this 101, 100,000 level, right where the 50 EMA is, another range that we have so far, unfortunately, gone and lost. I'm not going to speculate on where the weekly candle can go. There's still 2.5 days, which also includes a weekend to go. But once we see this close, we will have an indication of where it's going. We've got, we don't have much. We've got 92,000, 93, 92,000, which is kind of the base of this price action here, this sort of double top, which did play out again, start of the year, November, December, and then played out through March and April. So there's a bulk of price action in and around there. But then unfortunately after that, we are going to be looking at the high 70,000s. And by then, we really need to have some indication of what is happening. And there's lots going on globally, US shutdowns, all that kind of stuff, which potentially are hampering this in. We've got the UK budget end of this month as well, which, is going to have a knock-on effect on the global markets. Maybe not on a massive scale, but certainly those of us invested in the FTSE are probably going to be in for a bit of a kick and come the end of the month. But yes, we kind of got to give it a bit of time without reaction, which is why I always sort of stem for we need to see a couple of weeks worth of closes before below the 50 before we actually knee jerk out of it. And I accept that can be inherently risky because we have a couple of 10% candles and before you know it, you're down at 78,000 and then you're looking to get out. But we can only play what we see and how we feel. Let's get into some of these lines just so I can drop it down to the lower time frames. We'll go on to the daily. The daily, I don't think really tells us anything new in terms of where we've gone. We've lost that level, that previous vector candle, the 100K. We're sort of moving around it. The EMAs are all heading down. We haven't had the 250 cross yet. For those of you that are into your death crosses, that's still technically to come. But actually, I was watching, I don't know if it was Into the Cryptoverse. Someone anyway, fairly certain it was actually suggesting that when death crosses occur, that usually marks the bottom. And so maybe we just have to wait, and I don't know how long that is. I'll try and freehand how far this will take. Do a candle there, no candle, the trend line. and then another one here. You've probably got another week until they cross, maybe a little bit earlier, and then maybe that will signify the bottom. We'll wait and see on that one there. So it's not really the daily that I'm too interested in. We go down to the 4 hour. We're starting to get a little bit of a picture of a trend, the momentum, the movement here. So that 50 EMA absolutely knocked us down, and since then we have just been holding the 10 EMA's hand like we were a lost child trying to cross the road. I don't know where that analogy came from. But anyway, that is exactly what we've been doing. We have moved away from it, but each time snapping back, and we've snapped back, and now, with the downward momentum that we're seeing, we're moving. There is absolutely an argument to be had that potentially forming a double bottom here on a major support across multiple higher time frames. But for that to happen, we've got to see the next two candles. So 8 o'clock tonight, we really want to be seeing this moving back up. We can't afford for it to just head back down here. As I say, I always favor, for a really strong double bottom, the right-hand side of that W to be ever so slightly higher in price action than the left-hand side to show that the buyers actually stepped in. And of course, we're going to want to see it with volume coming through. But we're a decent bit away from the 50 EMA. I mean, it's 106,000. I mean, okay, you give it a couple of candles, maybe it's down to 105,000. It's going to get towards that 50 EMA, in my opinion. Even if we do see a bump, that 50 EMA is going to come back right at the bum line of where we want to see it through. Then the battle begins. Vector candle through the 50 EMA, build from that, and up we go. Perhaps we are speculating on that one. Similarly, the 1 hour time frame, and I have been living in the lower time frames. 1 hour, 15 minute, and 5 minute candles have been my life for the last 10 days. But the 1 hour, same story, just with the 50 EMA, and a really convincing 50 EMA push down every time it's going up. It can't even escape the cloud whenever we do get some sort of momentum there. But everything else still kind of plays out. That double bottom potentially there, the 100K level, there or thereabouts holding support. You can start to move this down to the actual 100K because we're starting to see where the candle frames are rather than that vector candle. But there's something to be said that we are finding some bounce on that 100K. You'd expect that at a psychological level, but if we're gonna, you move down to 100K, as we did, psychological level and also some TA, you bounce away from it. So we have that kick off or kiss off, whatever it is. Why have I suddenly forgot what Kobo is? Anyway, but it's now coming back to re-attack it. And so what we don't want to see, we want to see it have that bounce again, rather than it just be sort of a dead cat bounce or fall through here. It's too early to call. I mean, we're literally in the candle right now, 11 minutes to go from where it's going to go. We start to go down, and you can kind of see some target areas already in terms of vectors down here. I'm having to really squeeze it on the hourly to try and find where price action was. I'm going to have to go back up onto the 4 hour. So this candle here from the 6th of May, 95,000 is sort of where, sadly, we would have to look. I haven't brought up the liquidation chart that I usually do to see if there's anything that ties up with there, and I can't remember from Tuesday. But I'd certainly be looking at that. I'm hesitant to throw a fib on because I just don't know how to draw the bottom of this right now, the base. I mean, if we did all-time high to 100K, I wonder if it gives us an extension down there. I don't know. Not really. I'm not sure that was the best one to draw because we just don't know that this is the base. I think that's the problem. We just have no idea if that's the base. I know in the past we've done this one. It's 97,740, but I think we just have to leave that. You can't use every indicator every time. I'm sure if I sat here on multiple time frames trying to find some locations, I could probably do it. But that's where that one sits. In terms of bit tensor, then let's go daily time frame, move over to bit tensor, and we can kind of see that it is the sadness of that rally up really, and just how quickly it's come back down. And the issue was that for the best part of October, yeah, we were volatile up and down, but we always had the 50 EMA on the daily time frame to hold our hands. And even when we didn't, the 200 EMA was close by. And what's happened over the last couple of days, let's go to this line here. we've had that strong move down. So again, there's encouragement in this because we know we range, we like to take these out. So we've got something to aim for, of course we do, but we've got to face what we're actually dealing with right now. The move down, 50 and 200 EMA have done its best, but today's move, we've lost both of them. Obviously, 12 hours ago, we can recover it, and by God, if we recovered that back up to the 50 EMA, it's going to look fantastic in terms of a wick down to the downside. Buyers will have definitely stepped in. But just looking at how it's positioned at the moment, for me, that's the vector candle that we have to be considering targeting. Now, the 200 EMA, so the 800 EMA has finally moved a little bit. So Gandalf line is 315, but this is because that was it coincided with it for so long. But now it's sort of sitting at 320. So maybe don't be too greedy. If you are thinking of sidestepping or shorting and you're looking at a Gandalf line, maybe just think actually the 800's there. So don't get too greedy. Take some profit, get some of your position back in, and then if we get down to 315, maybe you can start to fill the rest. But down all the way down to 300, there's an argument that could be made just to close this one out because we like to close them out. We don't leave them behind. And as scary as that is to head down here, the exciting part is if this is the direction we go first, that's a hell of a long move up there. It's a 50% increase in price action. However you want to treat that with leverage or whatever, there's a good move to be had. So certainly some things to have a look at. Let's get rid of, I'll just delete all the drawings because they're just winding me up. There we go. Oh, no, I'm not. Right, let's move on to a lower time frame. 4-hour time frame. A bit like Bitcoin, I suppose, actually. 10 EMA holding our hands, and then we lost it. But just look down here why I'm a little bit sad with it all, because fine, 10 EMA, but now we get the point where we've got the 50 above us, the 20 and the 200 on top of each other. The 10 is what kicked it off, and we just gone lost the 800. And then this was all the way up here beforehand. We're just eating into that vector zone there. And where does it go down to? 320. That's where the 800 EMA is. So maybe it doesn't happen today, but for the last 3 days, BitTensor has been one of the biggest fallers across the market. We just need to position ourselves from that. Now, I don't know how that's affecting detail. They're usually, adverse or conversely done or whatever it is. So maybe your detail is going up. And if so, that's great. But in terms of just what I look at, which is BitTensor, because that's all I have, I'm kicking myself that I didn't take any profit. But going back to what Carrie asked in terms of last week, I made a comment in Discord about I didn't sidestep and instead I've been shorting. And the thought process behind that was, I suppose I missed the perfect opportunity to get out for a sidestep, and I never knew how far it was going to fall. And each time when I was looking at the percentage drops, it was like, it's a 15% drop or it's a 10% drop. The risk to reward of actually unstaking my entire position, selling it, and then waiting for it to fall $15, $20. Maybe the risk to reward wasn't there, whilst I could just take a few $1,000s, stick it in a leverage account and just hit short. And so I started to do that, which worked out very well on this initial move down, and happy that we did it. But the last 2 days in here, I've been trying to get a long going, and I just haven't been able to. And then I've looked at the charts and just been like, actually, I'm going to cut it because I just, I don't like where it's gone. Then it has moved up. Thought, okay, let's try again. Then it drops back down. And I just realized I was just revenge trading it, trying to get it back. So I'm trying to have a bit of a cooler on BitTensor. And then obviously I went in on a short today. So yeah, no, I can't learn from it. But that was the thought process anyway. Instead of taking the risk of sidestepping, maybe I'll try and leverage trade it. And it paid off to start off with, so it felt like a good strategy. And then I've probably given 50% back of what I made in that first fold just through messing around over the last 2 days. But that, that's trading. You can't win every trade. And someone said to me recently, I say someone said to me, I watched a YouTube video. It's not like they called me out. You can lose more of your trades and still be profitable. You can be a loser in trading and still come out profitable. And trading is just part and parcel for it. And so I try and remind myself when I'm down on the 1 minute chart trying to find an exit because I've absolutely messed it up, that losses are all par for the course. and they are. You know, we've got to accept that. We want to talk about a winner right now, and I don't know why or how or what's going on, but it's starting to get a lot of attention. Is Zcash, and this thing has just it doesn't understand how markets are supposed to move because we always say that you never go up only, but this is all it seems to have done for the last 2 months. I mean, bear in mind, 2 months ago, you can't see it because my head's in the way. It was worth $40. 2 months ago, $40. And it started off slow, bit of momentum, and then September ends $61. It's made a 50% increase, which the rest of the market was going up, fair enough. And then suddenly, I mean, look, let's get to Friday the 10th. Even on the 10th, the day that everything cascaded in liquidations, this thing still ended up as a green candle. And it's just continued to go up. And on the daily time frame, you can kind of see that 10 EMA has led the way. Now, I actually do think we're going to see a pullback over the next couple of days. For the main reason, we haven't touched a 10 EMA in 4 days. And today, we were up from, what did we start? 530-ish, all the way up to 670. And it's still, it's having a bit of a battle at the moment. But I do think we're going to see some pullback. And the thing about this climbing is getting into this spot now, I think, is incredibly risky. And I think most people know that because this has been leverage traded quite aggressively. Obviously, it's picking up a lot of attention. We're looking at it. Some of us are trading it. But I think leverage trading is probably safer to do as long as you balance your risk to reward out of there. Again, I wouldn't even know how to draw a fib. And in terms of vectors, we are in uncharted territory. This thing has never been this high. It broke its all-time high at 370. So there's not much we can really say except for it's looking pretty darn vertical. And if you want to look at an even scarier chart of it, just look at it once I move it out of the way. On the linear, if you can see it. I mean, that is about, Elon Musk would be proud of that from a trajectory of a rocket launch. It is near vertical. And so that feels kind of bubbly, poppy, absolutely. Does it mean we can't trade it? No, of course we can. Try and take advantage of everyone's greed because people will be seeing this, rushing into it. God, I've made losses all year. I need to try and make something back. Let's YOLO in on this one. That's absolutely fine. But the beauty thing of leverage trading, I'm not saying to do it yet because, only short it when the market breaks. But what goes up must come down. There's going to be a hell of a short opportunity to take in when it's time to do that. But on the linear chart, you can really see how far away we are from even the 10, even the 20, and the 50, I like it to pull back to. That's all the way down at 270 at the moment. So that'd be a 50% over, 55, 56% drop from where we currently sit ourselves. And even if it did fall all the way down to there and bounce from it, as painful as that's going to be for the latecomers, you wouldn't say it was unhealthy. You'd say, right, it's just corrected and off we can go again. I'm sure it will lose its momentum. This starts to fall. I think people are going to fall out of love with it. And I know there's a lot of comments about privacy tokens and people just wanting to, in this kind of world, in this kind of space, to go towards that. I don't think that's what's driving that. I think that's just a narrative people are hiding behind. I don't care about it being a privacy token. And the fact that it's not being spot bought as much as it's been leverage traded suggests to me this ain't about the actual fundamentals of the token. This is about greed. This is about people trying to jump on it. That's why they're leverage trading it. And so we've got to bear that in mind. I'll break this down on some smaller time frames, but just have a look at this. Earlier on, this was today, I just popped over 1,000. Year to date, in the year to date, this is up 10x, 11x type thing, 10x, 9x, can't work it my head around. In the last 90 days, it's up 1,500%. So this has been an absolute winner. So you can't say that this isn't on everybody's radars because it's completely outstripped the market. Now, sorry to put a bit of a downer on things, but I did, whilst I was clicking on this, I clicked this way. So this is year to date showing the biggest drops first. And I'm not out here to single one individual token. But should we just scroll down in this final year of a bull run or final 12 months of a bull run and just try and see how long it takes for us to get to anyone that's actually outperformed where they were on the 31st of December. So we'll keep scrolling. Remember, we're far right column here. We're still in the 60, minus 60%. These are levels that we get at the deep bear market. minus 60, minus 50s we're in now. We're still in the 50s. Okay, we got to the number 43. We're finally sub negative 50. We'll keep scrolling, keep scrolling. We're down into the 60s now. And there we go, our first green at level 67, and it's XRP. But actually, it's not really true because that one's not in the right position because we still got reds below it. So this one should be 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74. There are 74 out of the top 100 tokens that are in a worse position than they were 10 months ago, which is just wild. And yeah, it just says everything that I have feared about this market, that we're just not in the same position that we are. Altcoins have not done their thing. And I'm more of a, rather than hoping what may happen and speculate, we all speculate, but just be, okay, well, all it needs to do is do this. And if we see a fractal from the past cycle, it's going to do that. Whereas they're nice to look at, and I do them to try and give me hope sometimes, trust me. But when you see evidence like this smacking you in the face of just, they haven't performed, they're not performing, I find it very difficult to just get on board with, it's going to be all right in a couple of weeks' time. Trust me, bro. How's it not managed to do that in the past 10 months? It's not even managed to do it in the past 3 months. You know, so yeah, that's just my thought on that one. Sorry for sidetracking there. Go back onto Zcash. I am trading this. I'll try and give an example of how I'm doing it because I'm not looking at the 4-hour chart, so I've not really seen this. But on the 4-hour chart, you know, yeah, it's not. Oh, it's because it's on the log. Let's put it on the logarithmic. Sorry. On the 4-hour chart, you look at it and you're like, okay, we go back 2 weeks. We're kind of having nice bounces initially on the 50 EMA, and it's this last, I don't know, 5 days where we suddenly had that angular step change. I think Carrie actually posted one with an angular step change on. We've had this one, and now suddenly we've sort of had this one here, haven't we? And it has moved up. But it doesn't mean that we can't get another phase on this. And as I say, you go down the lower time frames, there's actually a little bit more logic. I'm just drawing that one. I don't know why whilst I was talking. There's a little bit more sort of logic and maybe sort of some rationale as to how this could sustain itself. But what we do know is we're quite a bit away from the 50 EMA, which on the 4-hour time frame it does come back to. So I do see a pullback, and there's an opportunity, one, to short it if you want to, or two, just to sit on your hands and wait. And by the time this gets to it might be sort of like 490, 500, just sort of aiming kind of some sort of entry there. Using the 50 EMA cloud on the 4-hour time frame is a bit of a cushion. And if it blows through the bottom of it, right, you know we've gone the wrong way. But I'll take it down. So the chart that I kind of live on, which is the 1-hour time frame. Unfortunately, I go even lower as well. So prepare for some headaches. And I've really been watching the 20 EMA, and just sort of trying to pick when it's going to come there, because it hits the 10 EMA quite a lot. But if I'm really looking for an excellent entry, I'm sort of trying to cherry pick where it's going to be on the 50 EMA, sorry, the 20 EMA. And I've just kind of been watching that. But again, you know, we sort of moved back down. How I've done this one, so I got in at 485 or 4, I think it was about 482. So this candle here, which, no, it wasn't. This one here, I think, but that's interesting. So on Blowfin, which is what I use it on, it came all the way down to 492. But I'm on Binance, so there is some difference there. Anyway, I've been monitoring. So I've taken profit of 60% of the trade. I'm out of the way, and then I've just been using this 20 EMA as my stop. And I actually kind of want the stop to hit because I want this thing to reset so I can go again. And so yeah, so I'm just sort of watching as it's go. But as we're speaking right now, you know, it got down to 594 last hour, and then it's up $50. It's up 10% in the last hour. Just showing you just the volatility that you can certainly see on this one. So it's difficult to kind of get in now because it's moving around a little bit too much. But if you really want to get into the nosebleeds, I'm not afraid to be on the 15-minute as we're going right now. So let's actually find when I got in. It must have been down here. Oh, sorry, it'll be on my phone. I haven't done the everything for. Bear with me. How am I going to find when I entered? Position history. Let's have a look. It's 525. That's when it was. It wasn't 490. That was the one before. I was going to say it's there. Here it was down here. So it was this one. Oh no, it's here. It was here. It's 11 o'clock ish. So it's down here on the 15-minute. So we'd lost that, waiting for it to break back through, and up we came. And then yeah, if you really just want to sit at your TV or your monitor all day, you can go down the 5-minute. But once you're in, I don't think you necessarily need to. It's just trying to find an entry of where it goes. It's not what I want to do, if I'm being honest, because I'd prefer not to. But I sort of kind of make a rule that if my trade isn't in profit when I'm going to bed, I close it. And if it is, I'll move a stop, because I just don't like what happens in Asia and whilst I'm asleep, and I actually want to get a good night's sleep from it. So that's where that one sits. Sorry, I kind of got a bit sidetracked there trying to find that. Let's just go back to actually what could happen from price action 1 hour time frame. So we've seen it retest the 10 EMA. We have seen a number of vector candles here, and interestingly, again, vector candles don't even on the 1 hour normally get retaken, and that I find optimism in that in terms of positions for re-entry. You know, highly likely that this gets retaken. It probably gets taken, later on this evening, back to 560. Sorry, and by then the 50 EMAs come back up. On a 1 hour, you've got a perfect opportunity to try and actually find an entry, because although it's not exactly the 20 EMA, it's going to be pretty darn close. It's a 4 hour candle. If it 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock tonight, get down to here, this 20 EMA is going to be there. And then you're just watching to see how it reacts off that. Does it lose it? Does it come through? And you can just mark it off on your chart and then go down onto the lower time frames and go, right, well, that level there is where it is on the 4 hour. What's it now doing on the 5-minute? Where's it going? What's it battling with? And then you can just go, right, it's broken through, retested, vector candle, whatever it is. But I can watch on the 5 hour, on the 5-minute, knowing where the level on the 4 hour is. And once I'm convinced, we'll just go in. And they're not always pretty entries. Sometimes I actually go in at market rather than limit. But that's where that one is. In terms of other tokens, let's have a look at Ethereum. We'll have a look at where the market general is, and then I think we'll knock it on the head. This doesn't look good, does it? Similar to Bitcoin. In terms of EMAs all falling over, 20 EMAs there, losing some key levels, and we're rolling down. I think the only thing that maybe saves it is the 800 EMA is far closer for Ethereum than it is for Bitcoin, and that's down at 3,000. But we're talking about being down at 3,000 there, and then we've got this vector underneath it. Maybe we wick through and we kind of hold it afterwards. But this is what for me summarizes the alt market. But let's try and find some hope. Let's try and find some hope from it. You can't see it. I have to squeeze it. My head's in the way. We had that strong move up from July, and that's the problem. There's nothing really locally support except for just vector zones. There's nothing like we can cushion on. Maybe there is at 2,900, which coincides with where the 200 EMA is. There's a little shoulder for a couple of days there. But the main body of action, prior to that, unfortunately, it's 2,500. I'm going to suggest that this is, for me, 2,900 is what I'm actually looking at, but we can't rule that bottom one out. I've just noticed where XRP is, and after its huge move back up, if you remember July, $2 to almost $4, where we're back down at the $2 level now. And again, an OG, massive support from it. People saying this thing's going to $10, and here we are back where we were for the best part of a year for XRP. So other altcoins feeling the pinch. BNB. I mean, BNB's probably still looking all right because it had such a strong move up from July. Actually, it's come down to the 200 EMA, and it's actually at a bounce. It needs to pick up its momentum here, but at least it found some support at sort of 870 before heading back down or rolling over again. Bitcoin dominance down below the 200 EMA. Sorry, no, Ethereum versus BTC below the 200 EMA. This white line is the one that goes all the way back when you're on the linear chart. What have I done there? Doesn't matter. Let's just get rid of it. All the way back to end of the cycle. We're significantly below it with the 200 EMA now acting as resistance as well. And again, this for me just backs up. I think this will continue to fall, maybe down as low as 0.025. Seeing that Bitcoin dominance get up to sort of that 64-65% level. VIX is climbing, so when it's high you buy, but we're looking at it to get to the 30 level, but it is getting quite high. VIX's dropped below 100 again. Nasdaq has been having some pullbacks. Interesting one with the Nasdaq, and I said this about a week or so ago when we were back here. We could have 1,000-point drop down to the 50 EMA. It'd be a correction, but not exactly a confirmation of the end of the market. And I think that's probably where things are. S&P, similar kind of position there. Gold's doing okay. Circle, of course, when I bought it at 127, 129, whatever, seemed like a good buy. And it's just told me to go and do one. It's about to go sub 100, maybe an opportunity to pick some up there. Nvidia and Palantir are both tanking a little bit at the moment, which may suggest why we're seeing such an impact across the market, because they hold such heavyweights in there. Nvidia's earnings next week could just be a precursor to selling now and then a move back up after that. Other than that, I think that's probably enough for now. I will obviously be on Discord for the rest of the day and over the weekend. We'll see how things pan out. Please, I really encourage everyone to just send your thoughts as well. There's a few people that sort of comment quite aggressively in the trading chat, but please, put anyone's in there. You may spot a token or of crypto that's doing something that others may want to jump on board with, and I certainly didn't find Zcash. It was told to me, so we're all there to try and help find our best positions. If other than that, I will see you on Tuesday. And it's the cuddle in a couple of weeks. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I need to think that through, whether I go controversial or what. I'll have a chat with Simon. We'll see. But hopefully some of you will be there and we'll be able to have a few drinks and a bit of a catch up. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody, and I will speak to you all soon. Cheers now.